Joe, you there?
Hey, Frank, that sounds better.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
I guess we're down to minutes left. That's okay.
No, we got some time. So the lady vanishes.
Lady Vanishes, and for those people who look for Hitchcock, you can relax. He doesn't come in till almost the very end of the movie. There's a scene when the romantic leads, Michael Redgrave and Margaret Lockwood, have a scene in their train compartment, and right after that they go out into the station. You'll see Hitchcock right there. So you can relax through most of the movie. When the train gets to London, that's the time to look for him.
And was it cut in London?
Excuse me?
Was the movie made in London?
Oh, well, almost none of it takes place in London. It takes place, it was made in a British film studio, Islington, I think, but, and they're all close to London, but it was filmed in Britain. It was filmed near London, but not in London. There's no location sites in London, nor does there need to be, because it all takes place on the train. And I was thinking about it, in the 30s, you could probably go through there's an outstanding film made every year in the 30s that takes place mainly on a train. Because, trains was the way to travel, and if you took a train from Los Angeles to New York or the other way, you went through Chicago, and you were on the same train for 3 to 5 days with the same people. So it was like a hotel on wheels, and it was a great place to set a movie. So movies like 20th Century and Night Train to Munich largely take place on trains, and I guess the last great train movie was From Russia to Love, which is largely on the Orient Express, and that's pretty much what this one is. It's an espionage drama, and I won't give away too much. The title gives away it all. There's a lady who goes missing on the train, and what happened to her. And then most of the movie is them trying to find her, and then they find her and they figure out what the plot is by why she disappeared and all that. So it all gets very convoluted, but it's easy to follow. So it's a good film in that sense. Many Hitchcock aficionados consider this his best movie. I'm not one of them. I like this movie, but it's not his best. But this has been very popular with people who like Hitchcock. This was Orson Welles' favorite Hitchcock movies. Francois Truffaut, it's his favorite Hitchcock movie.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and it wasn't nominated for Best Picture by the Motion Picture Academy, but it was Best Picture of the Year by the New York Times. And Hitchcock won. Hitchcock never won an Oscar as Best Director, but he did win. He won the New York Film Critics Award, which is, I guess in those days, #2 in prestige, and he won it for this movie.
Well, do you think movies like Psycho or mystery movies, at that point in time, didn't lend themselves to Oscars?
You have a point. Most of the Oscar winners at this time come from a handful of studios, and of course, this is not one of them. This is a British studio, and as far as, you look at some of the old horror, I'm a horror movie fan, you look at some of the performances of them, you say, gee, that should have got some more critical recognition than it did, but they just didn't. And the same with mysteries. There was a certain, I actually wrote an article on this once, the cultural battle of the 20th century between culture being handed down from the elite to the commoners and culture bubbling up from below and affecting everybody. And Hitchcock was definitely in the second class because he didn't go for prestigious stuff. He went for mysteries and film noir and tales of intrigue, which made rousing good entertainment, but which weren't the kind of things they taught you that in school that you were supposed to like. So yes, there was a certain snobbery about award giving, a certain I'd say in the critical circles too. The more lofty the aspirations, the easier it was to get a good review.
Hey, it was the same in music in the 1960s.
Yeah, I mean,
Mitch Miller was at Columbia Records. He didn't want rock and roll to come in.
Yeah. So
that's
I mean, you could write that in many aspects. Where does culture come from? And I think when the 20th century began, it came from an on-high elite and was handed down. And when the 20th century ended, it was almost the opposite. The really exciting culture was coming from like jazz. Jazz is a classic example. The growth of the film noir and horror movies and all that. They were considered trash I shouldn't say that about film noir, but horror movies were considered pretty lowbrow, and it's probably the most studied genre of the 1930s now. So, yeah, I mean, you have a point. I mean, it would be hard for the type of movies Hitchcock made didn't give him a leg up in the Oscar running. I don't have a list of his Oscar nominations in front of me. I think he got nominated for Psycho, but when you go back and you look, I mean, he made some good movies. He made good movies. He made bad movies. His great movies tended to be very good, but he had some real clunkers in there. But they're good or bad. He was trying for something individual. He didn't go with the flow. And awards can be conservative. And I'd say that's probably. Well, I'll say it. I think it's truer in film than in music.
You know what I'd like to see, Frank? I'd like to see retrospective Oscars. So you look back through the lens of time and say, did Psycho deserve to win that? Or did the movie that really won it deserve it years later,
Well, there's been a movement. There's been movements towards that. They come and go. Should we go back and honor these old films? And actually, the films that are honored are the ones that aren't forgotten. So, something official. I don't think the Oscar people ever touch that. But it's talked about. One thing. Hitchcock is near the end. The opening scene, and we have to be careful because this is a public domain movie, and you don't know what. And there's a lot of versions of public domain movies because footage falls out every now and then and it gets back in. But the opening scene is a snowy train station and all that. And pay attention to that because that's all miniatures. And we often don't realize when we're watching 1930 films that some of the scenes we're seeing are miniatures. It's a miniature train, and this is a miniature train station with little miniature, mannequin people there who actually are moving slightly. If you keep your eyes on them, you say they're not really moving, but then they do start to move. But then it's obvious when you look at them, they're not actual people. It's just a miniature. And there's this whole, the studios had a parallel universe. They'd have the film, the full-size sets with all people act, but they'd often have the miniatures side by side of them because no CGI in those days, and heaven knows they weren't going to build a train station for a clip that may last maybe 30 seconds, so they got away with what they could. And it's very cunningly done. So keep an eye on that. In this movie is this Michael Redgrave's first movie. I believe it's actually his second movie, but I think that his movie before this was he had a non-speaking walk-on, cameo type thing.
Lynn Redgrave's brother, husband.
He's Vanessa Redgrave's and Lynn Redgrave's father.
Oh, okay.
So and Colin Redgrave's father. Colin wasn't in the movies that much, but he was mainly like a lot of the British actors. He was mainly on stage, and because the British studios largely were a short drive or a short train ride from London, a lot of stage actors could go there during the day, film some scenes, and then come back for the play at night. So I don't know if he was simultaneously appearing on stage while he filmed this, but that would hardly have been unusual. The grand old lady of the movie, the lady who vanishes, is Dame May Whitty, which is a name that you may not have heard before, but as soon as you see it, say, "Gee, I've seen that face 1,000 times." She's 70. She's a pretty spry 73 for this movie, and she's perfect in the part. And I won't say who the villain is. Now I've given it away. One thing to watch in this is there's two rather ridiculously Britishers in there who all they care about is cricket scores or whatever. And the two characters, Caldecott and Charters, all they talk about is British. I mean, about is cricket, and there's intrigue going on around them. There's all this drama, and all they can worry about is, am I going to get back in time to see their cricket matches? And these guys actually became kind of cult favorites, and the characters and the same actors appeared in a handful of movies in the late 1930s, early 1940s, basically playing these ridiculous stereotypes of British cricket fans.
So you recommend it?
Oh yeah, I recommend this movie.
And that's our time tonight, Frank.
I'll talk to you next week. I think next week we're talking about The Manx Man, another Hitchcock movie. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.